Welcome to our community conversations forum. The reason why we're doing this is because there are lots of ways that the township serves the public. And it's best for you to hear from the people who are actually the experts in serving the public. So our various department heads, we wanted to bring this to the forefront, this issue of roads, because we know it's the overriding number one issue, biggest concern that we have here. And so what we've done is a presentation. It's a presentation that is online on the township's website. One of the things we knew we needed to start at is, if you go into the coffee shop, if you talk to the people at the Thanksgiving Day party or the July 4th, ask the question, what is the problem with roads in Michigan? You're going to hear a litany of answers. They use inferior materials. The politicians don't spend dollars wisely. We don't have warranties like they do in Europe. It's the overweight trucks, not enough money, severe weather, harsh climate in Michigan. We need to build new versus fixing existing. But bottom line, I don't care why they're broken. I just want them fixed, right? This was our process. Separate the myth from reality. Identify the different types of roads. How are roads funded? Determine who's making those decisions on which roads get fixed. How can we compete for more dollars to ultimately fix more roads? So, how do I fix my road? What kind of road do you live on? There's different types of roads, right? So, different types of roads. There's the interstate highway system. I-75, I-94, I-96. There's the state roads. Our state roads, M3, Gratiot, M97, Groesbeck, M59, Hull Road. And then there are what they call the county primary roads. So that's roads like Harper, Garfield, Hayes, the mile roads, etc., those main roads. Then there's what they call the secondary connectors. So the county, they gather residents to the primary roads. Then there's the residential roads, the actual subdivision streets, things like Finley and Wiedemann, and we actually picked some of the worst ones. Finley probably being the worst one in the township. Then there's what they call private roads. Private roads are the roads that are built by condo associations, apartments. They're privately funded. Those are generally the roads with blue signs. So how they get fixed depends on what type of road they are and who's responsible for funding it. When we first did this, I was surprised to learn there's that many private roads within Clinton Township. But all of them, all of those ones that are public roads are under the jurisdiction of the county. By state law, that is, every road is a county road. Township does not have jurisdiction. So here are the primary roads, the main roads. All of these roads are under the jurisdiction of the county. So how do we pay for roads, and who decides which roads get fixed? So here's what you hear all the time. I've been paying taxes in this community for 40 years, and how come they don't have enough money to fix my road? Here's how roads are actually paid for, and we're going to go through who's making decisions. So the road funding sources: the federal gas tax, the state gas tax, state vehicle registration fees. So if you drive an electric car, those are higher for you guys, right? Because you don't pay gas taxes. Then there's the state general fund. Then there's the local community voted millages, which we do not have. Some communities do. We do not in Clinton Township. Then there's the local community general fund. So the general fund, if you look at your tax bill, you're going to see that there's different millages for different things. There's the police millage, the fire millage, and the county general fund millage, along with revenue sharing that the township gets from the state of Michigan. That is what supplies our general fund. Then there's what they call special assessment districts. How many people have heard that? They want to get the road fixed, they call the county, call the township, and they say, oh, you need to do a special assessment district, right? So that's another funding source. So what we did is we wanted to figure out how the dollars flow. This is the flow of dollars. The only way that we figured we could actually explain this is to break it down. Federal gas tax, federal general fund, goes to Capitol Hill, 25% to local roads with federal aid eligibility, 75% to MDOT. That's to fund those interstates and some of the roads that are state roads, like M3. But that 25% to local roads with federal aid eligibility is what we want to focus on here, because the feds give that money, but the feds don't like to give it directly. They like to have a regional planning agency decide and come up with a plan for how those dollars are spent. I don't think they trust the county or the local communities, so they go to SEMCOG, the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments. SEMCOG develops what they call the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Plan, for those roads that are federal aid eligible. Then that money goes to, they develop that Transportation Improvement Plan, then it goes to the County Federal Aid Committee. So here's an interesting fact. What do we need to do? We need to fix our existing roads, right? We're not looking for new roads, but we're a township, so we don't have jurisdiction of the roads. Up north, what do they want to do in Macomb County? They want to turn those 2-lane roads into 5-lane roads, right? So the County Federal Aid Committee gets together and decides how those dollars are going to be spent and what roads are going to be on the Transportation Improvement Plan. One of the things that we did in Clinton Township, as we started to look at this process and learn more about it and figure out how decisions are made, we called all of the southern communities that are like us, that need their roads fixed rather than expanded. And we said, we need you to come to the meeting because we want to elect Mary Bednar on the Federal Aid Committee. Because we need somebody who is actually fighting to fix existing roads rather than what the county would oftentimes say, we need to give a project to everybody. But there's much different cost with fixing roads versus expanding roads. So here's the state dollars. The state dollars are your car registration fees. They are the state gas and diesel tax. And then there's about $600 million of general fund money for the state that goes into the pot. All of that money goes to MDOT, the Michigan Department of Transportation. And administrative fees come off the top, right? Because you have to run a state agency. So then it goes into what they call the Michigan Transportation Fund. The dollars are allocated this way. The state keeps 39%. That's for their M roads and for other things that the state is responsible for. Then if you're a city or a village, you split up a 22% allocation of those dollars. Then the county gets 39%. And the county is responsible for all of our roads. But not just all of our roads, they're responsible for many of the roads in the cities and the villages, if they're main roads. And then you have some county federal aid money coming off the top going into that county road agency. All of this is dictated by a formula. So when the state gets money, they come up with an allocation formula for the spending of those dollars. The state allocation formula is called Public Act 51 of 1951. It has not substantially changed since 1951. Think about how much different we are in Clinton Township than we were in 1951. So, 51 determines road jurisdiction, the funding sources, the funding allocation. Here are the problems with Public Act 51. Other than the fact that it was created in 1951 and has not substantially changed. I call this slide Fun with 51. 1951, the best-selling car was the Studebaker Starlight Coupe. The interstate highway system wasn't even built until 1956. The Mackinac Bridge wasn't completed until 1957. We were still two different peninsulas. The US still had 48 states. Alaska and Hawaii were not states. The first color TV broadcast, U.S. inflation, 51, 7.88. Here's my favorite, 35% of Americans lacked complete indoor plumbing in 1951. This formula is old, it's outdated, and it doesn't work. Here's another problem with Public Act 51. You know when you drive up north and you're on those 2-lane roads and they're beautiful. And you say, how come the roads up here are so nice and the roads in our community look like that? It's because the funding allocation says you get the same amount of money per mile of road regardless of lanes. It's on distance, it's not on width. So what does that mean? All of Southeast Michigan is seeing the money that we pay in diverted to rural communities. That is a huge problem. That is probably one of the biggest. So another problem with Public Act 51, the gas tax is on the gallon, not on the dollar value of the gallon. So when you pay the gas tax, what happens when cars become more fuel efficient? State takes in less money, right? Another problem with Public Act 51 is this. It's that allocation, 39% to the state, 39% to the county, 22% to the cities and villages. So if you're a city or a village, you get your own allocation directly out of that. You can decide you're going to fix subdivision streets or you are going to use it as the match requirement. When the county does a road project, whether it's in a township or in a city, they require at least a 50% match if it's just state funded. So those cities can use those monies to pay their match, or they can use that money to fix their subdivision streets. They have choices. We have to go beg into the county. Another problem. This is the funding per capita in the states. Ohio is 44.8 thousand square miles, a population of 11.7, so more people, but less miles of road. We still didn't fix that. That decimal point should be a comma. Square miles, we have one of the most complicated road networks, largely because of all the lakes and bridges and rivers and all of that, all the water. But we do 7.74 per lane mile per capita. Ohio does $15.14. Wisconsin, much bigger in square miles, but less in population. They do $11.32 per capita. So Michigan has historically underfunded its roads. So it took years of bad state policy for roads to go downhill. We're 39th in funding. We don't allow what they call impact fees. So when we sprawl, when we grow, when we spread out the population even more, we can't assign the cost of all of that infrastructure to the developers to add to the price of the house. We just continue to grow. Public Act 51 is a problem. There's no tax indexing. And of course, we also have those high truck weights. This is how growth impacts. I talked about the roads in northern Macomb townships versus Clinton Township, which is transitioning from being an outer ring suburb to an inner ring suburb. And when that happens, your cost structure goes up, your revenue tends to stagnate. You don't have new growth. We're not turning farm fields into subdivisions like they are in Macomb and in Chesterfield and in Shelby and Washington and things like that. So basically, we pay twice. We don't have in Southeast Michigan more people. We don't have more taxpayers. What we have is roughly the same number of people spread out over a larger area. So what does that mean? That means that we have that much more infrastructure to pay for. And the older communities wind up subsidizing the infrastructure in the new communities. Isolate just what it takes to fund a municipality. So take out the zoo, the county, the DIA, the schools, the community college, all of those things. Clinton Township, just to fund the municipality, is 14.3 mils. Sterling Heights is at 16.5. However, they do have a streets millage and they do have a parks and rec millage. Everything to the south of us is dramatically more. Everything to the north of us is dramatically less. Why? Growth matters. If you're turning farm fields into subdivisions, that means you have a steady stream of new money flowing in. We have all of you and us. So you can see where growth impacts this problem. So this may look familiar. If you're a single family home, this is an insert that I created and put in the tax bills. Luckily, Mike Aiello has carried that on. We are pleased to see that. But it goes through in your summer tax bill. You pay the schools and the county, right? Now you pay it to Clinton Township, but we don't keep it. We distribute out 100% of those dollars within 15 days, actually. For whenever the money comes in, 15 days it's out the door to those other taxing authorities. So the state education tax, the ISD, the community college, the county operating millage, the library there, you only pay one library millage. If you live in the Mount Clemens School District, you pay the Mount Clemens Library, so the green section. If you are the Clinton-Macomb Public Library, any other school district, not Mount Clemens, you pay the millage for this right here. You only pay one of those greens. The township's money comes in the winter collection. So what you see there is the red is fire millage. The blue is the police millage. The yellow sliver is general operations of the township. Less than 1 mil. It was authorized as 1. There's a provision in state law called Headley which rolls the rate back. Meaning as you grow, you roll the rate back. So it's now 0.78, I think. But we do everything that's not police and fire or water and sewer out of that yellow sliver. Those are the things that the township is required by state law to do. The things that we do that is not required, but we may do them according to state law, are all of those other things. Roads are expensive. So what we did is we asked the County Department of Roads how much it cost to do different types of projects. There's 2 that we want to highlight. The first one is what we need to do in Clinton Township, which is called a mill and fill, or rehabilitate and resurface. So take a 5-lane road, grind it down, repair some of the substructure, and then do an overlay. That costs $3.5 million a mile. But to take a 2-lane road and turn it into a 5-lane road, that costs $9 million a mile. So when the county says we got to give a project to everybody, I said, well, if you're doing a mile of expansion in Macomb Township, then I want 3 projects in Clinton Township. There's a system for determining the condition of roads. It's called PASER. Preservation, the roads we need to maintain are the good roads. The fair roads, we want to rehabilitate and make sure that we keep them as fair as long as we possibly can. And quite frankly, that's one of the most cost-effective things that we can do through the county. And then, of course, there's the poor roads. It's too late, right? Can't maintain them anymore. They need a reconstruction or a resurfacing. So, new scoring process for primary roads. Here was the process. The county would call us up and they would say, what does the township want to do? And a number of people would get together and they would say, you know what, we've gotten a lot of calls on this. And the squeaky wheels get the grease and, hey, we're going to submit for this road or this road or this road. And one of the things we did with this process is no more arbitrary decision making. We're creating a scoring system for the roads, for the main roads. And then that's going to tell us when the county says there's a call for projects, this is what we're going to fix. So take, what is the condition of the road? What's the PASER rating? What are the traffic volumes on those roads? What are the high priority safety locations? Where's the crash data tell us? Underground utilities. We don't want to have to do a road and then a few years later tear it up because we have to do the water main, which we're responsible for. Do those at the same time, and if there's a portion of the road that needed to be torn up in order to get to the water line, we can use some of our water and sewer dollars for the rehab of the road. We build in an equity formula, and then, of course, essential services. And then because all three branches of the Clinton River meet in Clinton Township, flooding. Flooding's huge for us. We are a low-lying area. Us and Harrison Township are two of the lowest areas in Macomb County. And what destroys roads quicker than anything else?
Water.
So through this process that started in 2021, what we did is we said, how can we partner with the county? How can we use some of our federal infrastructure money that we receive through the ARPA funds? And how can we use those to bring more money into the township, create more investment? So you can see, starting in 2021, out of 105 miles of main roads, primary roads, 42 of them in 2021 were ranked Port of Failed. We are now down to 11 of those 105 miles. So 11 miles of road, but 25 lane miles of road are now ranked Port of Failed. But that's significant progress in 3 years. Give us the money, we can fix the roads. So what we did with this EQR process, understand how the process works. 2, evaluate and study the condition of our roads, do those PASER studies. Create this objective and systematic ranking system, the scoring matrix. Leverage the dollars that we get to bring more money into the community, and then partner with people in communities to do those SADs, those special assessment districts. One of the things we know, however, is those SADs are incredibly expensive, and they swamp the resources of most homeowners. Here's where the problem comes in. We've made significant progress on the main roads. The map to our left, 2008. You can see the condition of the road. Red is Port of Failed. 2008, 2018, 2023. This is what has happened with our subdivision streets in that time frame. So we're making progress on the primary roads. 59% of our residential roads are ranked Port of Failed. Out of 203 miles of subdivision streets, 121 of them are ranked Port of Failed. This is our challenge. Through Public Act 51, it requires a minimum 50% match from the residents. The county says, we don't have enough money to fix the main roads. We're not even going to touch the subdivision streets. They do have a grant of about $3 million. Well, wait, it's 4 now, right? $4 million for all of the townships. So that means if every township does a program, you're limited to $600,000 as the match limit from the county. The township, again, doesn't have jurisdiction of the roads. We don't receive tax dollars for the roads, but we do all of the administration, all of the work. When you guys do a special assessment district and you turn it in for a district, we take it through the entire process up to the point where the county takes it out for bid and then hires the contractor to actually do the work. So residential streets in the SAD process. So there's an application that you come and you speak to Mary about. Preliminary cost and estimate for the frontage. It's you pay by front feet of frontage with a formula. Obviously there's pie-shaped lots. Some people have narrow lots at the front. Some are wider at the front. It all gets factored in and collected. Then you go out and circulate a petition. We do an estimate for you. Then a petition is circulated. And if you get 50% of the signatures, we can bring it forward. If not, we can't. Then goes to county. County does the bid and the design work. We have another public hearing, and then eventually it goes out for bid at the county. So, in the past years, so from 2016 to 2025, this process of the county paying 50% and residents paying 50%, those that came forward, you can see we had a total of 41 streets that came to us and said, we are willing to tax ourselves to fix our subdivision streets. 27 of them chose not to proceed. 4 petitions circulated, they didn't get the signatures, my street being one of them. So what we tried to do is, we talked about all these problems with Public Act 51. We talked about all these problems with, the state funding formula and how things go. We put a letter on our website, this letter here that we have in the back of the room. We know that the only way we're going to get this fixed is if our legislators address this issue. And so we need to lobby. We created an engagement form to encourage people to make it easy for them to contact their legislators. So that process was effective. You've done this before. Many of you have signed already. We've generated, I think it's about 400 and some letters so far that go to our legislators. So we've been flooding their offices saying addressing subdivision streets is something that we cannot any longer overlook. And that has been effective. So you can actually click onto what can I do, and it'll take you to this. You can then fill out the letter, customize it, put your own, thoughts and, comments in, and then hit a button, it gets sent to them automatically. Since we've been doing this, we've had a better dialogue with the county than we've ever had. They used to just call us up and say, hey, there's a call for projects. What do you want to do? We tell them. They say, no, we don't want to do that. Yes, we want to do that. No, yes. And that's it. Their word goes. It's their jurisdiction. Now we're actually able to influence them. But they've also created some new programs. So there is a program that they use called Pavement Preservation Program. No match. Local community doesn't have to pay. Residents don't have to pay. County makes the decision on what pavement preservation projects they're going to do. Then there's the current reconstruction SAD. This is the 50-50 match. This is for the residential streets. This is the county offering that $2.4 million grant to assist residents and pay the 50% up to a maximum of $600. And then an additional 26% for engineering and administration if the township, rather if the county does it. If they allow us to do it, which they've done in certain circumstances, we can reduce that cost of the administration. The funding's often insufficient. It requires you to go out and get those petition signatures, and it's incredibly difficult and it's incredibly expensive, even at 50%. They created just last year this SPP program, Subdivision Preservation Program, requires a 25% match. We've been picking that up out of our infrastructure funds because it's a 2-for-1, right? We pay 25%, well, 3-for-1. We pay 25%, I was the treasurer. I shouldn't. If we pay 25%, we're getting a 75% investment in our community. That is a good thing for us, and it's a good thing for our community. What we've been trying to focus on is these feeder roads where we know we cannot get a special assessment district. Carlier is an example. We talked about Carlier. One side of Carlier, there's no houses. Another example, Iroquois Street. We know that there's no houses, there's an apartment building. The apartments are not going to pay for the road. So we've been trying to do this SPP program. Now, it's not a full reconstruct, it's an overlay. So they're repairing some of the substructure and doing the overlay, but this is the result of our lobbying, your lobbying, sending these letters in, saying these issues have to be addressed. So this is an example. Clinton River Road was a pavement preservation program. So if you drove here on Clinton River, you see now that the county did that on their own. It wasn't that bad, so they could just overlay it. North Miles was the full reconstruct. They paid 50%, the residents did. The SPP program is a street called Wendell Street. That is north of 16 Mile Road between Groesbeck and Gratiot. We did the road ends because that's where the roads were the worst. We couldn't do the full subdivision street, so we got the county to agree to do those road ends to actually, so your cars don't get tore up as they're trying to get onto Gratiot or Groesbeck or turning onto their subdivision street. These are the completed and planned road projects that we have coming up. This is more aggressive than we've ever seen. Even though we've made significant progress from 21 to 24, these are the current 25, 26 projects that are currently ongoing or on tap. New state funding. So if you remember the state budget, the big issue was roads. That was holding things up. The governor actually came and signed the state budget last summer on Utica Road, right by Millar there and the bridge. By the way, bridges are incredibly expensive. If you think roads are expensive, bridges are even more. However, what they realized, and I think that our letters had a significant impact here, they said, we need money for local roads, for subdivision streets. And so, 240 million out of 1.1 billion additional funding available for roads. This is how they divided it up. 100 million for bridges, or 42% of that 240 million. 40 million for rail grade projects, 35 million for transit, 65 million for infrastructure projects, and Macomb, so 860 million then goes through that Act 51. So that means the majority of these, so 172 for state trunk lines, 301 for cities and villages, but not townships. And the county get a 65% of that 860 million allocation. So it means Macomb, $27 to $30 million additional money coming into the county, but right now they have zero of it. There's a big lawsuit because marijuana filled the funding and then the marijuana industry sued. So 27 to 30 million for the county. We don't know how much they're going to put in these different line items. Their focus, they tell us, is on pavement preservation. That means taking those roads that are fair, maintaining them better so that they don't go to the failed category. We suspect that's going to be the biggest source of the money. Subdivision reconstruct programs, that 60-40 match or the 25-75 match. Roadside ditch programs, mind you, county's responsible for all those northern townships. Drainage and roads and ditches and culverts and all of those things are a huge cost as well. Climb back is going to take time, but we're going to continue our recent progress. We're going to utilize this objective scoring criteria to make sure that the projects that we do are the projects that make the most amount of sense rather than making arbitrary decisions. Questions?
How is the cost calculated for non-square or irregularly shaped lots when considering SADs?
This policy was created to try to make it as equal and fair as possible. So if you had a corner lot, what we would do is we'd look at the size of the lot, because sometimes corner lots are also, when you go to sell it, more valuable, right? Because they're bigger. So we look at it, we try to equate these things, and so what would happen is we would add the frontage of the two together, and then, depending on the size, you either are going to pay the shorter side only, or it's going to be those two things minus 150 feet. And there's different rules, and we sat through and we go through tax tribunals all the time on it, and we always are winning because the idea is if most lots in there are, say, 100 feet wide, and your lot would be now 380 feet because of the lengths and so forth, the idea is to get you as close to that 100 foot. So you might pay 110 feet, which is more, but your lot is bigger, but you're not paying the 300 and some feet.
So
and
others
we
are
do the
going to
same
get
thing,
105, even though their lot's 100.
you know.
So they're going to pick
And
up a
so
share of your.
The best thing
corner.
is every specific one, we would sit down. If a person has a question, they call me, I can explain how it's calculated. Same thing with pie shape. We do a setback and we measure it along there. So just because your front, like if you have a really skinny front and it's only 20 foot, you're not just gonna pay 20 feet. We're gonna set it back and you're gonna pay, and it's gonna be close to that 100 foot. You know, that one you might be at 95 feet. So you are paying less, but you are, you know, so those are the equations we've used, and they've been tried and true to over time, and we're not going to get rid of those because we're trying to make them equal.
Sterling Heights has much better roads than we have. Would becoming a city help our situation?
So there's a couple of things that you're not considering here, and Sterling Heights does have better roads. It's not simply because they're a city. Sterling Heights has massive industrial we don't have the benefit of. And if you know anything about property taxes, you and I cost the township money. I think it's 2 to 1 that, you know, for every dollar we generate of taxable value, we cost $2 or something crazy like that. Industrial, for every dollar of cost they generate $4 of taxes. So that's how towns fund those great amenities they have. They have that plant. They're just so fortunate in that regard. But the other thing is, because they're a city, yes, they've had multiple years of getting the Act 51 allocation, and they've been able to use that Act 51 allocation to match county dollars to take better care of their roads. Every year that goes by that we don't take care of our roads because the money's not there, they get worse. So I want you to think about this number. 300 miles of roads in Clinton Township. If they cost $3 million a piece just to make the numbers round, that's $900 million to do all the roads in Clinton Township. If they all last 30 years, we'd have to have $20 to $30 million a year to fix Clinton Township. And we're talking about the county just getting $27 additional dollars for the whole county. When you let things get this far behind, you're digging out of a hole, and then you got to get that $20 to $30 million to maintain it. So yeah, Sterling Heights has had the benefit of that plant and all that. We don't have that.
Sterling Heights also has a streets millage. So that's why they're 16.5 or 14.3. So because they get their own road money, they then do an additional millage. So people pay that additional mills. But not just the people pay it, the industrial properties pay it as well. And Sterling Heights is double the industrial tax base that we are. We are all residential. Warren is triple us in terms of industrial tax base. So that's money that's coming in the door that they don't have to do a thing for.
Has Clinton Township attempted a road millage in the past?
Road millage, 2.9 mils, failed on the ballot. Back in, I want to say, like 2017, 18 maybe? Something like that. It failed, it narrowly failed, but part of the reason why it failed, I think, is because you had all these streets that had approved a SAD, and then they were paying. So they either paid upfront or they paid over 10 years on their tax bill for that 50% cost of the SAD. And then they said, why would I pay for then everybody else's road to be done when I had to pay on my own to do mine?
Can Clinton Township prohibit large trucks on Moravian Road to help prevent further damage?
So Moravian's considered a primary road, and we can't, I mean, again, it's the Department of Roads, but we can't set limits like, you know, being a primary road, we have to allow the trucks on there. Just, you know, there are load limits, but it's the same as Groesbeck, and so they're gonna take whatever route they can take.
Even though it's residential.
But it's primary road.
I've dealt with the county for a lot of years. Stop signs, speed bumps. The answer I get, I can almost recite it to you verbatim, doesn't meet the criteria set forth in the Michigan Highway Traffic Safety Manual. I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do.
Is it possible to get a warranty on our roads?
No. They do not do warranties on roads. If they did, they'd probably be 2 or 3 times the cost. However, here's what I'll add to that. Our engineering firm, AEW, many years ago, I came across this paper that the president of the company was talking about. All roads in the state of Michigan, built from 1995 to 2005, are all deteriorating at the joints. They changed the sand deposit, and the sand had a higher silica content. And there was a chemical reaction between the silica and the alkali in the concrete. And they now put an additive in to counteract that chemical reaction, because they're still using this new sand deposit. But they had no idea that that problem was going to exist. And that's why when you saw Garfield being done, you saw little strips being cut out, and then new rebar. It also talked about the rebar needs to be below the surface far enough, because concrete's porous, and so if rainwater gets down to where the level of the rebar is, it rusts out and deteriorates. So it's things like that. They're building roads under better standards now, and that's why they're lasting longer.
So you might ask, well, why don't you get the warranty? And like Paul said, the cost would be tremendous. So the way it works instead is the county sets the specs that they have to build to, and they inspect the job. So to the company doing the work, they're like, hey, you set the specs, and you said the job was done according to your specs. You're responsible, county person. The contractor is not. That's the logic behind it. And again, if you would put the burden on them, the cost would be much higher, and frankly, they would all use shell companies and go bankrupt after 3 years, so they wouldn't have to deal with the problem anyway.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Appreciate it very much. Thank you.